In this video, I'm going to respond to some frankly amazing electrochemical geniuses out there in the ether. I'm John Cadogan from Expert.com.au. New cars cheap, Australia only, website, card. On September the 30th, I reported on the Danish dudes, the former Vikings from the Faroe Islands, which I'm tipping you still cannot point to on the globe of the earth. Dude, those proud sons and daughters of Vikings have deployed an EV firefighting super-cooled high-concentration brine solution on a car-carrying ferry in their former England-invading neck o' the woods.
Install a normal 1100 watt heating element.
To initiate the thermal runaway, fire technicians have already installed an electric heating element inside the car battery pack. There is a 2-minute delay from the fire alarm sounds until the drencher systems initiate. Firefighters are already dressed up because this is just a drill. The side windows are broken first to release potential pressure. The spraying unit is inserted through the window. The brine is released. After 1 hour, the demonstration is finished and the situation is under control.
This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get 4 extra months of Nord free now at nordvpn.com/AEJC. Say you're in a cafe one day and you think you've just connected to the free Wi-Fi. But in fact, a hacker has just inserted himself between you and the internet and he's about to start ripping you off properly. How would you even know? This is called a man-in-the-middle attack. It's one of the most common ways to get hacked. But there's no law that says you have to be the next victim. You need countermeasures, and that's what NordVPN does. NordVPN does the stuff that you and I don't understand in the background. Encrypting your data, hiding your IP address, locking everything down, basically. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. The 2-year plan discount is huge right now. Plus, you're going to get 4 extra months free. nordvpn.com/AEJC. Link in the description. Just subscribe, download the app and connect. 1 click later, your IP address is shielded, your online traffic is masked with NSA-level encryption across as many as 6 of your devices. NordVPN is the fastest VPN on the planet. It costs only about as much as 1 cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity and your devices secure. Because your location is masked, you'll be able to access streaming and other services that might be blocked where you live. Plus, you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. You might even be able to score some great deals on travel and accommodation that are not available at home. That happens all the time. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now, boost your security and enjoy that discount plus those extra 4 months of free subscription time. It's totally risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/AEJC, link in the description, and thanks to Nord for sponsoring this episode. Essentially, the brine can be refrigerated on board the vessel to -19 or -20 degrees C or something without freezing because salt water. It's a frickin' miracle, dude. They've got 16,000 litres of this chilly brine on board, ready to rip, and thermal cameras monitor the EVs, which are parked in a designated EV area of the car deck. So, if some recalcitrant EV starts to make like the HAL 9000 from 2001 and refuse to open the pod bay doors or something, or even worse, have a giant off thermal runaway, the onboard firefighting crew gets alerted and administers something of a chilly saltwater enema in the circumstances, fire goes out and none of the firefighters need buy themselves a drink at the bar for the rest of the voyage, so yay. They even did a demo of this system at a port next to the ferry where they put a real Renault Zoe to death in a properly ritualistic way. Odin himself was very pleased that the Danes hadn't completely forsaken the old ways. He and Freya hooked up after the celebration for old time's sake. Some people did tell me, however, that because the test was done on dry land, it was somewhat unrealistic. I formed the view that it might be quite irresponsible to cause a thermal runaway in an EV on a multi-million-dollar vessel just to show off for the cameras. Personally, I thought this was extremely clever. The brine system, not Odin heading back to Freya's place. That was more or less a done deal. The water absorbs the heat energy, right, and it's somewhat supercharged at doing this because the freezing point has dropped to about minus 20 degrees C or something, so it's got a lot of additional heat absorbing capability when it is chilled to that extent. At the same time, the high salt concentration acts as an electrolyte and it discharges the battery, and that's kind of important because that means the battery can't spark up again if it's fully discharged, right? So I thought, go Vikings, you rock, dudes. And I further thought there's a broader application for this, surely, even here in the cultural wasteland of Australia, perhaps. Imagine mandating a brine input port into EVs for the battery, for the purpose of firefighting, you know, thermal runaway extinguishment, or something of that nature. That might work. It might be amenable to vandalism. A few people pointed that out as well, but hey, can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, can you? People did tell me it was impractical for firefighters to carry 16 tonnes of refrigerated brine everywhere, and I agree, and I never said that they should. But it might be nice to have a few tanker trucks deployed in various regions in big cities, carrying a big fat brine bath in which to dunk the corpses of burnt e-bikes and scooters, maybe even EVs, so that they don't flare up again after the first fire is extinguished, like as a secondary hazard control measure. Imagine developing a jack with a spike and a hose attached, which firefighters could fling under a burning EV using a lance, or maybe even a robot, like a bomb disposal robot. The spike goes up, pierces the battery from beneath, and the case has got a hole in it, so the hose jams brine up the battery's new bum, in as much as batteries have digestive tracts, which is to say, metaphorically only. We could come to grips with reality, right? There's a reality of the danger that this chemistry poses to society. We could come to grips with that instead of pretending that battery technology is flawlessly safe just because we all need to be on the road to electric frickin' utopia. And for some people, this concept has become a religion. And religions are not amenable to criticism of this nature. This is the spectacular fantasy that government ministers and senior firefighters are currently telling you in the public at every opportunity. Like, there's nothing for you to see here. It's all safe and all good, despite the mountain of evidence to the contrary every night, seemingly. There's this new lithium-ion battery drama on the news, is there not? I'm looking at you, tragic Venice electric bus inferno, plus Sydney backpacker hovel, e-bike conflagration, double thermal runaway at Seaford Meadows on the outskirts of Australia's only living cemetery that's not Canberra, Tesla grid storage battery module dumping toxic shit in thermal runaway all over residents 23 kilometres south of Rockhampton. The official advice on that one, shut your doors and windows and grab your drugs. Dude, I couldn't make that up. Plus, MG battery meltdown burning out 5 cars virtually in the shadow of the Sydney Airport Air Traffic Control Tower on the same night that a Tesla burned itself to the ground after hitting debris on the highway near Goulburn. The sleeping giant, or ACCC as it is sometimes also known, has received 230 product safety reports relating to lithium-ion battery dramas in the past 5 years. That's almost one a week on average, right? Late last month, the New South Wales Joint Standing Committee on Road Safety was quietly handballed the assignment to execute a parliamentary inquiry into A, the risk and management of fires and other issues caused by batteries in electric and hybrid vehicles, including light electric vehicles. B, the risk to workers in the automotive industry and emergency services personnel caused by batteries in electric and hybrid vehicles. And C, the adequacy of training and equipment for workers in the automotive industry and emergency services personnel regarding potential hazards of batteries in electric and hybrid vehicles. And of course, 2 days ago, LG issued a hilariously urgent instruction for the owners of its solar backup batteries to switch them off immediately because they might, burn your friggin' house to the ground and gas the neighbourhood with their vile, toxic hazmat contents. Pretty hard to sell that one as a hidden benefit, isn't it? Or, an operational characteristic. And because the battery industry is so freaking incestuous, the actual term LG battery really means LG, Solar X, Opal, Red Earth, Iguana and Vata branded batteries. It might have been easier simply to make a list of the batteries that don't have to be switched off immediately, don't you think? But aside from that and the catastrophic events of the Fremantle Highway and Felicity Ace giant car-carrying ships, lithium-ion batteries are, as we are continuously told, perfectly safe. Dude. However, some of you had a problem with the Vikings and their innovative brine EV enema firefighting technique. There is also the issue of discharging a massive DC battery through brine, which is a solution of sodium chloride. DC electrolysis of that will produce vast amounts of chlorine gas. That is not hypothetical. I used to demonstrate this all the time back in my teaching days. Goodness me, vast amounts, all in capitals. Sounds pretty serious, especially as it's not hypothetical with a capital H. I do hope you weren't also teaching English, dude. Chlorine gas is bad shit, I'll concede that. It'll corrode your lungs while it suffocates you, which to me is kind of the exact opposite of passing away quietly in your late 80s in a hot tub full of cheerleaders' mummies. A lot of you had problems with this alleged production of chlorine gas. Like, quite a lot. See what I mean? I even got this from an alleged EV firefighting specialist. There is still ongoing research that has identified concerns with using salt water on lithium-ion batteries' thermal runaway. Due to the chemical reactions and temperatures, there is a very real likelihood that the reaction will produce quantities of highly toxic chlorine gas. The way that's worded, with all of those equivocations and qualifications, it kind of sounds to me like a firm possibility of a definite maybe. I really don't think we need to be doing too much more research into electrolyzing brine because, chemistry, it's a fairly established science by now. Some chlorine gas will be made because the salt is NaCl after all, but typically not that much. Let's not forget that a battery in thermal runaway will also be off-gassing hydrofluoric acid, hydrochloric acid, cobalt compounds, other toxic shit. These are properly toxic, nasty compounds anyway, right? And in that situation, the fire could easily spread to other electric vehicles or other combustion vehicles. The problem gets geometrically worse, and ultimately you might sink your ferry in the Norwegian Sea in the middle of frickin' November or something, which sounds fairly chilly. I'd rather be on an intact ferry with a contained fire and a little bit of chlorine gas, given the alternative. I'm just funny like that. But hey, do go on. The specific gravity of the majority of gaseous products of thermal runaway are lighter than air, so will go up into the atmosphere and dissipate where chlorine gas is heavier than air. This will mean it will sink into low-lying areas and build up, potentially asphyxiating anyone around this space. Okay, but I'm pretty sure the firefighters are all dressed in scuba, minus the U, and evacuation of non-firefighters is a priority in circumstances such as these. Also pretty sure the car deck is somewhat ventilated. Chlorine gas is also water-soluble and typically doesn't last very long when you let it loose out in the world because it's quite reactive, which is why there's almost none of it around, and it has to be manufactured when needed industrially, and that is quite an inconvenient process. We were in Norway at the start of the year and were fortunate to be able to discuss this brine solution with some of the world's greatest minds at the Fires in Vehicles Conference, Tunnel Fires Conference, and then again in Germany and the Netherlands. The jury is still not convinced this is a viable or even safe method. At the outset, I really don't know who these world's greatest minds comprising the jury actually are, but one thing I know that shits me to death about humanity are the clubs and the industries that seem to magic themselves up. They just sprout like mushrooms all around really serious problems. Imagine developing an effective system to fight EV fires against this backdrop. This would be a truly terrible development because the world's greatest minds might have to get a different freaking job. There'll be no more conferences in the foothills of the Matterhorn, packed with people paying $5,000 a head to hear great minds tut-tut about how no fires are safe, and these ones, well, we don't know how to fight them exactly now, and the jury's still out, dude. Meanwhile, according to actual scientists, the US National Library of Medicine catalogues this study, entitled Discharge of Lithium-ion Batteries in Salt Solutions for Safer Storage, Transport and Resource Recovery. 3 engineering researchers used sodium chloride, like brine, sodium sulfide and magnesium sulfate in separate experiments in concentrations of 12 to 20%, so kind of right in the Viking ballpark for the concentration of the brine, and they used them to determine the most effective way to kill a battery, like to discharge it fully, for the purpose of recovering its resources and transporting it safely, thereby combating the problem of waste in a safe context. They also cite the fact that 65% of fires in garbage facilities in California come from lithium-ion batteries. And this is because society wants to be green notionally, but is in fact fairly shit at recycling. Basically, they found that sodium chloride solution was the most effective one for discharging lithium-ion batteries. They even looked at the thorny issue of chlorine gas production. As salt concentrations increase, the possibility of the participation of various ions rather than just water at the anode and cathode becomes more likely. For example, when chloride ions are present in the water, the following reaction may occur. This is basically how you might make chlorine gas. You have to speak chemistry to understand this, of course, and if you were asleep at school, I am disinclined to help you at this late stage. I guess the interesting thing about all of this is what they found. Chlorine gas is toxic when inhaled, but the amount of chlorine produced in this process is negligibly low. Negligibly low. A bit different to vast in all capitals, isn't it? This could put next year's round of conferences in jeopardy. The best minds are going to hate that. So, with this in mind, I bailed the Vikings up on the vexed issue of chlorine gas as a byproduct, perhaps, of saving the day out on the open ocean. And my contact there had frankly heard all of this conjecture before. We considered this early on in the project. All of our testing so far has shown no signs of chlorine gas production. And when we consulted with researchers at Viking Technical University, they said it was theoretically possible, but the amount produced would be minimal. So, on the balance of all of that, I would be prepared here and now to fill the coffin of next year's round of not actually fighting EV fire conferences with chlorine gas and nail it closed. Wouldn't you? If you need more supporting evidence than that, dude, industry uses chlorine gas for this and that all the time. It's a common thing to need for various industrial processes, and that stuff is properly hard to make. You cannot just shove a battery up some salt water's arse and stand back. It doesn't work that way. You can make chlorine gas from sodium chloride solution, but you need titanium anodes wrapped in platinum as a catalyst, and the salty solution needs to float on a bed of mercury, the infamous liquid metal, inconveniently. Or you can use salt water and specially microscopically permeable membranes and electrolysis, but that method doesn't work unless the brine is exceptionally pure. In other words, you have to really try to make chlorine gas. Like, if you really want to make it, you have to really try. That's written in a big book somewhere, I'm pretty sure. It really doesn't want to be made. It's happy being locked up in sodium chloride and various other compounds, frankly. And finally, I got this as well, upliftingly. If you are getting paid or rewarded in any way to promote the brine product, fair enough. But I would trust that would be something clearly declared. Yeah, dude, it would. And while I was reading that comment, incidentally, QAnon called. They said the veiled accusation that I copped a reach around to report the Viking briner sounds like a ridiculous conspiracy theory. The Vikings did not pay me to report on their system. That is absurd. I just found it interesting and worthy of a story in the context of all of the frickin' battery fires which we are bombarded with on the news, seemingly nightly. You can tell I was not paid because in that package, when I reported on that briner, I couldn't help myself, dude. Like, I saw a joke and I just swam towards the light.
When this happens on land, there are some difficult methods to contain the fire, such as you can take the car and lift it into a container and submerge the car in water for a long period. But this is not doable on a ferry deck, so we cannot use that solution.
There's no denying your ancestry, is there? I mean, you can feel it. I certainly can. That Viking blood coursing through the veins. If he had been born just a few centuries earlier, I'm pretty sure he would have been up the pointy end of one of those ships with a dragon on the prong, sailing up the Thames to impregnate the Queen of England. Or the King. Just another man having a baby, you know. Women, brother. Where were we? And that is how you tell that no money changed hands. Pro tip for anyone out there hoping to start a YouTube channel and thereby earn fat stacks of cash under the table by way of reach around from this vested interest or that. Don't roast the CEO, dude. Like, that's the pro tip if you want to get paid. As a journo, I have met dozens of CEOs and senior executives over the years, probably hundreds, and they all consider themselves to be really important people indeed. There might be rare exceptions, but it does seem to me to be a singular defining characteristic on the balance of probabilities. Like, look at this fiasco in Western Australia surrounding the CEO of Woodside. I simply can't get a sense that she even possesses a sense of humour. Like, I'm not seeing it. Typically, with CEOs, they have this substantial entourage of people whose only job, seemingly, is to say yes all day long. It's like the emperor's new clothes, endlessly. And woe betide the entouragee who points out that today's new suit might look just a little better if only someone managed to get all the wrinkles out of it. Senior executives are therefore generally the people in society with the least overall amenability to see the funny side of being personally roasted, sailing up the Thames to impregnate the Queen or the King, whatever. Even though the Vikings did find that kind of conduct quite uplifting back in the day, it's like why they were put here. And I get it. Like, I would have enjoyed that too in that situation. If Queen impregnation was in my job description, dude, I would at the very least try to acquit myself professionally. We're all a product of the world in which we're born, dude. Like, if that's why you sailed all this way, we might as well go through the motions. The bottom line here, if you are trapped in a box and is floating on the Viking Sea or elsewhere, and an EV on board inconveniently catches fire and goes into thermal runaway, supercool brine is going to be your new bestie. I am not getting paid to say that. There should be more deployment of systems such as this, and perhaps it can be improved on, but we need it because there sure as shit is going to be more lithium-ion battery fires into the future, and the current state of ambient countermeasures is shit.